Welcome to today's Zoom call for the B Project. And the B Project is the Business and Entrepreneur Project. This is a project for people who are wanting to become a business owner or an entrepreneur, or they may already be one and they want to learn more. They want to take their business to the next level. All right. So our first week, as I was saying, we spoke about the summary of the program. And then I came back the following week and we talked about the thing that people love to talk about. We talked about a business plan, and we talked about the importance of an executive summary, and we talked about the importance of a mission statement. And so everyone kind of had an opportunity to take some time to figure out what it was that needed to be included in that after we talked about it. And Carl, do you remember us talking about the business plan and why we said a business plan is important?
Yes, it's a roadmap. It keeps you grounded and guided in what your plan and your purpose for your business is.
That's exactly correct. A lot of people they don't want to do the work, and I get it. It is not the easiest thing to do, but it is necessary to do. And it is what it is. It just is what it is. So last week, we had attorney Justin Camper. He came on, and Justin came on and he spoke about legalizing business. And legalizing business, we talked about the differences between sole proprietorships, partnerships, LLCs, and corporations. And so we kind of honed in a little bit on the LLC and why it seems to be a very popular thing for smaller businesses. Doesn't mean that you're not a larger small business, but you're not necessarily wanting the taxation of the C corporation or the S corporation. So we talked about that. And so this week, we're going to be talking about real estate. We're going to be talking about location. Now, Sash, I got to tell you a little bit about Carl. I'm going to let Carl tell you what he wants to do.
I'm excited.
I would really love to hear what you were going to say, but
I ain't saying.
My goal is to start an internet or streaming radio station, 24-hour streaming music station. And so it will be cloud-based, internet-based. And so and I don't know as far as location, how that plays into what I need, but I'm sure that I'm going to get something.
Sure.
You absolutely will. You absolutely will. And believe it or not, Carl, your location does have something to do with that. I don't know if Sash will touch on it or not, but if not, as you were saying that, something came to mind. And I'll tell you what we just experienced a few minutes ago. Every internet company is not everywhere. So if you don't have the right bandwidth or the right internet company because they're not available, your location is going to matter. And right. I have had a big internet provider when I had an office, and sometimes that service would go down. And that was a pain point because everything we did was internet-based. Our phones were internet-based. Our computer system, everything was internet-based. So it really does still matter. It really
Carl,
does.
To piggyback on what Angela said, I've had the opportunity in the 18, 19 years that I've been doing this to work with different governmental organizations to help find locations. And the big thing to piggyback on what Angela was saying on the real estate side is bandwidth, what providers are in that area. And the second thing is especially if you're doing live streaming or live, let's say podcasts or whatever it might be, is going to be what we call redundancy. Okay. You always have to have a redundant plan in regards to your location. Let's say Comcast, for some particular reason, someone hits that Comcast pole and shuts everything down. You've got sponsors, you've got people that are paying for your, show to broadcast there. You have to have streamline redundancy, whether it's through microwave dishes or whether it's through, fiber optic. But that's probably one of the biggest things that you're going to definitely want to pay attention on when it comes time for you to find a location and grow your business. When it comes time for you to broaden your business basis and find a location, one of the key things that I would look for in your circumstances would be, like Angela was saying, be aware of what providers are in that area and what we could use as a redundant backup plan in case something does go bad with, whether it's a Comcast, pole, or whether it's a HP pole or whatever it might be.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, Carl, I'll tell you a little bit about Sash so we can get started. Sash, I'm going to read what I wrote, and then I'm going to tell you about Sash. So Sash is originally from Crown Point, Indiana, and he really is a true entrepreneur. He represents Berkshire Hathaway, and he owns Crown Insurance Group in Crown Point, Indiana. He attended the University of Nebraska, where he earned his bachelor's degree in finance and marketing, all while being a Division I athlete. So setting high goals and achieving them is simply part of his nature. He has a strong background in many aspects of business, including sales, marketing, and finance. These skills, combined with his desire to simplify your entire process from either selling your current home to finding your dream home to moving in it, or finding the right location for your business, is what sets him apart from your average real estate agent. So now I will tell you my spiel on Sash. I think Sash is just one of the greatest well-rounded guys that I've ever met. Sash is very authentic, and he really cares about people. And those are two big deals in order to be successful in life. Sash has given up his evening. He has a family. He could be doing something else, but he found this important enough to want to be able to connect with people and help navigate them through some location questions. So I think you have one of the best in the industry to answer any questions that you may have. And having this conversation will probably also prompt some other questions for you.
I'm excited.
Okay? You
Well,
should.
thanks for the great introduction. I appreciate that.
Uh-huh. So, Sash, tell us, location. Is location?
Yes.
I've heard this term forever. Location, location, location. Is it really that important?
It really is, Angela. I mean, location is probably one of the key aspects of a business. Again, it's going to fall back on the type of business that you're getting into. Certain businesses require a greater location than others, and as we go from one side of the hemisphere to the other side of the hemisphere, you're going to notice that real estate's always important, because one thing about real estate that most people don't understand, especially if you're buying it, tends to appreciate. I mean, you would hope that it would appreciate. So locating the right areas, not only is it going to provide value to your business and your customers, it's also going to be, an investment opportunity for you and your family and whoever's part of your organization. So those are the key things that I like to touch base on. And another big area is making sure that we don't bite off more than we can chew. Understanding the business plan, understanding the value added proposition that building or that location is going to present to you and your clients, knowing whether we're getting in over or not. And sometimes it's nice to have somebody to bring you back down to earth, because when we do these business plans, a lot of people get really excited. They get really energetic. They're very passionate about what they're looking to do, and a location is probably one of the biggest expenses that they're going to run across, especially if it's a retail market, or if it's a service-oriented business. Everybody wants to have their presence out there. Well, there's a cost with that presence. Just as I mean, if you look at The biggest example I like to use is, if you drive down, whether it's Broadway or, US 30, how many Chase banks do you see? They're all over the place. I mean, there's a reason for that. They're making money on those locations. So the thing that
Right.
we have to ask ourselves is, the thing that I'm going to leave you with, Carl, today is one of the questions that I'm going to leave you with is, what is that location? If you are looking to get a location, I want you to think about it. What is it going to cost for you to pay for that location on every month? So how much business are you going to have to generate every month additional from what you've already, that you're going to need for your family, and your operational expenses in order to pay for that location? So is a location at that particular corner going to bring in an extra $3,000-4,000 a month to justify, being there? Or is it going to be better off suited, in a studio, for instance, like yourself? I'm going to use you as an example here, Carl. You're starting this off. I mean, is it going to be more conducive for you to, do it out of your house for the first couple months, until you get off your feet? Or is it going to be more conducive for you to do, rent space in a studio that is local here in Northwest Indiana?
It's absolutely going to have to start off in my home.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Because
think
again, it's cloud-based, and so there's no live shows or anything like that. Everything is pre-programmed. So for the first couple of years, until I can get to the point where I can rent out a building or buy a building
mm-hmm.
to house a studio for live programming, it'll have to be in my home.
Sure. And another thing, when it comes down to real estate and selecting a location, a lot of these municipalities have case studies that have been done. Traffic studies. How many people drive by this particular road at this particular time that are free to the public? I mean, all you have to do is call the redevelopment commission or the planning commission office and ask them to speak to whoever's running that department. I think a lot of those people you would be surprised that they'll welcome you with open arms, especially if you're looking to bring a business into their community. So I would definitely encourage entrepreneurs to take advantage of that, because it's free to you, and they're a wealth of knowledge because they know a lot of people in that area.
So, in listening to you talk about this, Sash, it makes me think about a lot of things. Like in Carl's situation, it used to be brick and mortar for radio stations in music. You would actually go to a station. You'd go to a station, and I still, me personally, I kind of like brick and mortar, and this is why. Working remotely these last few months, I've been a remote employee for a long time, but as you know, I would still get out and go visit people and have face-to-face contact. Well, I have found that face-to-face contact is what sharpens your iron. Mm-hmm. When you are at home alone, it makes it a little more difficult to sharpen that iron because you may not be around other sharp blades. Right. So in the case where radio used to be housed, you could kind of listen and hear what other people were saying. You could kind of run an idea past someone. You had an engineer that could kind of make sure everything was running smoothly. And the big thing to me is it was soundproof. Mm-hmm. So you didn't have to worry about interference. So I said all of that to say this to Carl. And I understand it being run out of your home because, it's more economical that way initially. But you also have to ask yourself that. So now you got to be concerned about internet providers and what kind of sound will actually be picked up in that home. Because I know some of these mics, like the Yeti mic, my neighbor can be saying something outside almost, and you can hear it on the mic. So Carl, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I have a room that I use in my home to record things on, and it's been working, for the past several years, where I get great sound quality. And since I'm the only one who will be actually recording live, for any broadcast that comes on, that won't be an issue for now. It won't be an issue until, again, I start brokering time for other clients and bringing them on, and having actual broadcasters on the station. But in the very beginning, because it'll only be my content, so I'm really kind of.
And help me understand this, Carl. So are you going to be selling particular, like, let's say from 6 to 7 o'clock, I can turn around and buy that hour worth of bandwidth on that particular station? Is that correct?
At a point, but from the beginning, we're only concentrating on selling commercial time or advertising spots until we can start generating. Until we can start generating numbers, we're only going to sell advertising. Now, after we reach a certain number and we have an audience built, then we will open up, and then we will start doing, as you said about, brokering the time from 8 to 9 a.m. or whatever. We will do that at a point, and that's when starting the building, having the brick and mortar is going to be vital.
Now, Carl, help me understand the industry, and excuse me, I'm just not familiar with this industry. Is there is there studios? I know there was one, correct me if I'm wrong there was one, I believe, that was on Broadway just south of 101st Avenue. Is that one still on the west side of the street? Is that one still there in Crown Point, do you know?
I'm not sure. I know the one you're talking about. I'm not sure. No, they're not there. I think they moved. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was WLTH.
Okay. I think you're right. I remember I had a friend of mine that used to, and I haven't talked to him in a while, that used to broker some time out there and used to have his own talk show and type of, music. And he would purchase, I think, like an hour or two a week, and that would be, his time. So, and he would run.
Yeah. And so the part that I love is that I won't need a large space. I will just need space for, a studio and an office, or a couple of offices, and we're off to the races.
Right. But the majority of your income will be coming, obviously, from advertisement, correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay.
So I just got to find a way to convince Angela that advertising on radio works.
And I've noticed, and a lot of that. I mean, statistically, I'm sure you've got a plethora of statistics in regards to what works and what doesn't work, what time frames work and what don't. So that would be. I hear a lot of people advertising on the radio, so I'm sure there's a reason why they're doing that.
Yes, yeah, it does absolutely work.
Sure.
It does work, Angela. Well, it really does.
I believe you. Have you? So I'm listening to you talking about your vision, and there are so many things that run through my mind, at the same time, because it's like this movie screen drops down, and I'm like seeing this whole thing, and it's just moving. So I'm thinking, okay, you get this space. I just know that customers are a little different. People are moved by where you're located. They're moved by what you're advertising, what you're presenting. Now, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this so it doesn't come out wrong. So let's say, for example, someone saw that I had a radio station in Chicago. They may say, oh, okay, they're in Chicago. It's a larger area. They think that it's something associated with location. And that's just the mindset of some people. So now, when you choose your location, will you have that in mind? Does it matter? Is it a big deal to you at all where you're located, since it's going to be cloud-based? Do you think people will perceive you a certain kind of way based upon where you are, where you're actually located?
I absolutely hope so. And the reason for that is I love being the underdog. I love being underestimated. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a passage of scripture that I absolutely love. And the question is, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? And
Mm-hmm.
so I want that perception because I'm based out of Gary, Indiana. And can any good thing come out
Okay.
of Gary? Listen to the station. Just give me 15 minutes and you'll see what good can come out of Gary. So while
Okay.
I've worked several stations in Chicago, I've been at GCI, I've been at V103, so I've done the Chicago market, which is extremely saturated. And
Mm-hmm.
there is that perception of, Chicago being the third largest market in the country, and that's great. But I'm only 36 miles away.
Right.
So I don't
Mm-hmm.
would have such a great or a grave, it would be a grave deterrent,
Okay.
especially
Okay.
because it's internet, it's cloud based and it goes all over the world, just like an iHeartRadio app.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Carl,
Okay.
help me understand the industry and where it's going with a lot of these podcasts and satellite radio, and how how that could affect location and so on and so forth.
Well, the industry is trending towards mobile because there was a time when I was younger, when I was smaller, and when I first broke into the business, people listened to the radios in their homes and they listened in their cars. Well, now nobody's really listening to music. They're not listening to the radio in their cars. They're listening to it on their phones through apps and mobile devices. On the
Mm-hmm.
And so nobody terrestrial radio is going through a thing where they're scrounging for listeners now. That's why you see trends of all of these celebrities becoming radio hosts now, because the stations have to do something to drive people to their station. But even in that, it's not working because people are going through apps. And so I don't believe that um, location is going to be a detriment. I think that it will help absolutely from a studio perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but it won't break. I don't think it will break anything at the moment unless the trend discontinues.
Right.
Because
I,
if
li-
I
I
have a
like.
if I have a cell phone or a tablet or my laptop, I can reach any station pretty much in the world.
Sure. It sounds like, which for your industry, that's great because you can keep your expenses down, because that to me is that's the number one problem a lot of new entrepreneurs have. They have this vision. They think that they need this particular location, or they need, this particular, um, equipment, or so on and so forth, and they get in over their heads, so that they end up shooting themselves in the foot before they even begin. So I definitely I commend your passion on this, and definitely see where you're going with it. Because if you don't have to spend $3,000 a month, or if you don't have to spend $1,000 a month, and you can perform just as good, if not better, why not?
Yeah, I understand, but it will be necessary. It absolutely will be necessary to have a location because, again, when we open up the clients, we want to make sure, one, that they have somewhere centrally located that is off of major thoroughfares. They want it to be in a nice area where they feel safe and they feel comfortable. So
Right.
yeah, that will absolutely have to happen, and we will absolutely need to consider a location for the studio at some point.
Right, but
Mm.
to piggyback on that, you don't necessarily need, um, you don't need retail space. You can go with office space or even space right outside a retail strip, so to speak. Correct?
Right, correct.
Right. Okay.
So Carl, this is funny because I just thought of something else. So I remember when I had an office, I was next door to a studio.
Yeah,
I was next door to a studio.
I remember.
Oh my goodness. I experienced a lot. It was and they were open. It seems like they were open almost 24/7. It was amazing. And all walks of life came into that studio. And I felt like I was part of the studio. I heard the organ playing if they were playing the organ. I heard their music. I've never done a drug a day in my life, but I smelled all of the stuff coming from the studio. I was like, good Lord. It was all of the time.
Well, fortunately, that was a recording studio, and I have that's a slightly different animal because and so I know about that too. But for radio, you won't have those issues. There won't
I'm glad
be.
to know that.
There won't be one. It will be an absolutely professionally run business there, and because a large part of the I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, so therefore there's none of that's going down. None of that's going down. Even though there will be a plethora of genres played on the station, it will be more wholesome. I don't even think we'll have explicit lyrical content.
Okay.
Because
I just remember that clearly.
Yeah, I know. We've had some. Yeah, I've had encounters with that, and I know that we will have mostly in the live part of the studio. We will mostly have like maybe like music shows, and maybe pastors or preachers doing teaching.
Okay.
So,
I see.
Yeah, it won't be that. It's not that type of studio.
Okay, all right. Well, Sash, now that Carl knows where he's going to initiate his project, when he goes to look for this office space, based on what he's saying, if he wants to have, let's say you wanted to have recording artists come in and interview live, things like that. What's important for him in location?
Well, it sounds like to him it's going to be the image that he's portraying. I mean, he wants a professional establishment, a professional office that it's going to make his customers or his audience that's coming in to do interviews feel comfortable. Whether it's a pastor, whether it's a business owner, whether it's a well-known author of some sort. So to me, if I were sitting back and having a conversation with Carl, I think the biggest location, the biggest selling point on a location for you, Carl, correct me if I'm wrong here, would be just the image of your business. So you would want something that's in a classy establishment that's going to make your consumers and your audience, people that are coming in, feel safe.
Absolutely. Safety is my number one concern, and then the image, the look, is the second most important concern, because I was brought up with a concept of even if you don't have $1 in your pocket, look like you got $1 million.
Right. I have a slang that I use all the time. Act as if you were a millionaire.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to act fool. Act as if you've been there before.
Right.
So if you've been,
right.
so you're 100% correct. I think we're on the same page in regards to. I'm getting a feeling of what your business model is looking like, Carl. What you're looking to attract and what type of organization you want to establish moving forward, which is key. I mean, your location, it might not be a year from now, it might be 6 months from now, is going to be very important to you. Those things are we're going to have to find something that is, again, in the right location with with the right price, because we don't want to overextend ourselves either.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, Sash, okay, let's say that we're talking to someone. Let's say you're a realtor or you're an insurance agent. You're in sales.
Sure.
Do you need an office space? What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's a in my opinion, in today's day and age,
Mm-hmm.
it's always great to have a presence to meet
Mm-hmm.
with your customers if you need to, but with DocuSign and everything that's going on in the industry, I don't think it's as crucial as it used to be. And these are the reasons why. When I first got into the industry about 20 years ago, we used to have the homes magazines. I don't know if you guys remember the Better Homes and Gardens magazines that you would be able to pick up at the grocery store, and you advertised in there, and those were the big things. So if you wanted to see what the new houses were at that month, you had to go and get the Better Homes and Garden magazine. So that is since phased due to technology, and it's starting to. To bring it even closer to home is when I first got into the business, a lot of people did open houses. Anymore, open houses are obsolete just because the technology has made it very, very easy for consumers to look at locations, whether it's commercial, residential, whatever it might be, via software. I mean, when we turn around and list, when we turn around and list a home, the majority of the time, depending on the price and what package the seller likes, I mean, we'll do 3D walkthroughs through the houses, virtual tours. We'll do drone videos. We'll do so. I mean, some people. I mean, I think it was last year I sold my first house when the customer never even walked in the house. They didn't even come and look at the house. They looked at everything was done via internet, and the consumer never even saw the house as they purchased it. And it was an expensive house. It was over $500,000 house. So times are changing, and they're going to continue to change. And I've noticed that in a lot of different industries. So when it comes down to not necessarily retail space, I think retail space is always going to be there's always going to be a demand for it. But when it comes down to office space, I think you're going to see a plethora of it available here in the next 15 years. And what I mean by that is I think this pandemic that we've gone through has really opened up the eyes to these larger corporations that says, well, we ran our sales force or our marketing force or our financial force without even any office space, and we did a lot of that very efficiently. So you're starting. I think this time frame that we're going through now in my industry is really going to change things quite a bit. You're going to start seeing corporations cut back on actual office space. You're going to see them co-opting offices, amongst 2 or 3 employees to save money. And they're going to give their employees more freedom, because employers didn't really like to let their employees go out there and do the things that, all of a sudden now we're doing, but now they're realizing, hey, we can't trust our people. So, start seeing a lot of more people working from home, doing the things that they need to do remotely, whether they're, on the road or whatever they might be. So, to answer your question, I think the real estate market, not necessarily on the retail sector, but on the office space sector, I think you're going to see a lot more availability and a lot more scaling back being done, which for you, Carl, might be perfect. I mean, it might fall right into your lap, and you might be able to pick something up because there might be, anytime there's a surplus of office space that's out there, I mean, obviously the price gets driven down, you know?
Right. I understand.
So, you know, I mean,
It's funny
things are
because-
changing. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just thinking, I'm thinking of some of the businesses where you have to absolutely have some brick and mortar. And then, of course, we've had some major changes in the way people do business over the last 15 years. Amazon is a big deal, you know, and now I can order stuff that's delivered to my door, and I can even order my groceries online from a local grocer, and they will deliver it to my door. But there are some things, and I saw even now with the pandemic through Microsoft Teams, you can visit with your doctor and chat. I'm just kind of old school. I need some face-to-face contact. I need I need to be able to read the body language. I need to be able to look in a person's eyes to see if I can trust them, you know, that kind of thing. But I'm thinking about, here's one business where brick and mortar is very important, the investor.
Right.
The people that invest, if you invest in real estate, of course, brick and mortar is huge to you. And I guess I'm just thinking, wow, what's happening to the investor right now? And what's happening to the person that wants to be an investor? Because they may be two different dynamics. The investor may be losing, and the person who wants to invest may be able to come and pick it up for a much lower price, you know? So it's just very interesting how you can be going for the same goal, but you're affected differently now with the COVID-19 and everything that's happening. And if you would speak to us maybe a little bit about, for example, I talked about my teams and doctors. I saw the commercial on television. We use my teams at work, where, you know, you can now discuss your X-ray results or your test results with your doctor, just like we are right now on Zoom. You can do it through my team. I know that circumstances have not allowed us to meet, and we've adapted really quickly, as you stated, to being able to navigate through this. Do you think that we will stay in that place, or people who are graduating college, you're still a physician, or you're graduating with a professional degree, do you think that, what would you say to them as far as location? They want to go and get a job. Let's say they live in Houston. Mm-hmm. They live in Houston, but at one point they were concerned about relocating. Do you think they'll have to relocate now, or will they be able to work at home?
You know, Angela, I mean, to touch upon the questions that you asked. I mean, I'm going to start with the first one in regards to the investors and what I'm seeing come out from the investors. Investors are very leery at this given point, and I always like to paint a picture to people when I'm explaining what investors like to do. I mean, if you look at certain areas, a lot of customers will miss the boat, and I'm just gonna throw out a couple areas that a lot of these, whether it's people that have land in certain particular areas, always like to hold off and think that they're going to get more money and get more money and get more money, and then all of a sudden the time passes, and then you drive by, whether it's driving down the way in between, you know, where the drive-in used to be. All of a sudden now it's becoming the town center, which is great. You know, I drove by there the other day and it's looking fabulous. But for the longest period of time, I would drive by there and I'm just like, this is so much land. Why hasn't anybody done anything with it? Well, I think what's going to happen is you've got these investors and these people that are looking to invest their money, and they're looking at, all they care about is their return. I mean, let's face it, that's why they're investors. You know, all they're caring about is their cap rate, what their rate of return on their money is going to be. So what they're doing right now is they're looking back at it and saying, okay, are we heading into a recession? That is the big word that is being thrown around right now, because if we're heading into a recession, they definitely, a lot of projects have been put on hold. A lot of, I mean, but that's the $1 million question, because if you can answer that question, we all wouldn't be sitting in front of each other right now doing these Zoom calls. We would be
Right.
doing,
Right.
living on sipping margaritas on a beach.
Right.
So
Right.
there is concerns out there, absolutely, 100%. And myself as an investor being one of them. I mean, where do we go this? Do we take around? I mean, do we turn around and take advantage of this, or are we heading into a recession? Because if we are heading into a recession, real estate market's going to correct really quickly. There's going to be an abundant amount of properties available, and there's going to be people going through some hard times as we've experienced in the past. And there's going to be foreclosures on the uprise. So there is concern. I think, this pandemic has slowed a lot of things down. So when it comes down to, like, when it comes down to, relocating into other cities, I think with this pandemic, it's really slowing that aspect of it down as well on the real estate side, because companies are putting a freeze on hiring. They don't know where they're going with this. College students aren't willing to travel to other cities or states like they would normally have. So I think you're seeing a lot more people, instead of entertaining going to Colorado or Atlanta, I think they're seeing, within their demographic area for the most part, until things, iron out. So things aren't changing. I mean, there's a lot of concerns out there, and as in your circumstances, Carl, as starting a business and looking to start your venture. I mean, it's a concern that a lot of people have. And I mean, I'm sure you've thought about that as well,
Absolutely, because I did consider relocating for several reasons, but more so because of the business opportunities that may be, or serving customers outside of this area. So I did consider it.
Sure. I mean, the great thing about where we fall, exactly what you said, Carl, earlier on in our conversations. We're 23 miles or 30 miles away from Chicago. So, I mean, there's great opportunity for us. There's a lot of talent in this area. We don't necessarily, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that talent, hopefully. I mean, I would like to see a lot more of that talent stick around here and start expanding their talents around here and start, planting roots into this area versus taking their skills to Chicago and relocating.
Right. I agree.
So, Sash, here's a question for you. Somebody's looking to start a business, and they're looking for a building. And let's say the business is going to be let's say it's a doctor's office.
Sure.
What's important to them? As a realtor, how would you identify a good location for them? What's important when you have a professional occupation?
Well, for that example, Angela, I do work quite a bit with medical facilities, and whether it's rehab facilities, whether it's doctors, whether it's clinic. The biggest thing that they look for is easeability, and because a lot of their patients are going to be, some of them are going to have problems walking. Being handicapped, accessibility. Just the safety aspect, as Carl was saying, is extremely important to them. Perception. I mean, having a professional office to them is a direct reflection of who they are and the organization that they belong in. So that is very, very important to them. So real estate to them, to a doctor's office, is extremely important. And you're starting to see more and more of that, especially with dental offices these days, is a huge thing. You're starting to see. I walked into a dental office the other day for my daughter, and I mean, I was just blown away. I mean, I was absolutely blown away at the technology that they've gone, to with where everything is on like a big screen TV. It's a touch screen. You check in. You see your name, you see where you're at in the queue, and I mean, it's just mind-blowing. I mean, things are changing so much in their industry. Everything is done with computers nowadays. Everything's electronic. So to them, having a location, a mortar and shell is very important to them, especially the newer generation that's coming out of dental school or that's coming out of med school is extremely important to them. And you're going to see that continue to rise, especially with the baby boomers getting older and older and needing more medical attention moving forward as we get older in this particular area. So, I mean, locations, what I would tell the entrepreneurs that are coming out today, location is extremely important. It's a direct reflection of yourself, but don't bite off more than you can chew. Like we were talking earlier, depending on the industry that you're in, I mean, you can easily get away with whether it's a realtor, whether it's an insurance agent. I mean, do you need a physical presence to meet with customers? Absolutely. But do you need that, glass office? I mean, do you need that, that third story corner office at the Chase building on Broadway? I mean, let's face it, people aren't, I mean, you've been in business, I've been in business, people aren't going to come knocking on your door based upon office. They're going to buy from the people that they feel comfortable with. Okay. And I mean, you are your number one revenue driving source. So instead of spending $1,000 on a office, spend $1,500 or $2,000 on an office and use the rest of it to sharpen up your presentation skills, or bring on an assistant in your office and go that route. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we're in business. As much as a great thing my dad always taught me is you have to love what you do, but at the end of the day, they still call it. You still have to go into work and you have to produce. You have to make it happen. Angela and I have talked about this a lot. A lot of people will talk to talk. I mean, we will spend hours on end discussing what they need to do, but at the end of the day, when no one's watching, what are you doing? And that's what makes the difference in business.
That's right. And just wanted to let you guys know, and this will take me to another question. I've had a couple people text me and say they weren't able to get into the meeting. I'm not sure why, but I know one person in particular had a question about location. There seems to be questions regarding the beauty and barber industry.
Sure.
A lot of people are thinking, hey, I can cut hair at home. Well, you can. Now, this is just my opinion, and then I want you to speak to it. My opinion is I feel better when I'm not at someone's home because they're very relaxed when they're home. And I still need you to be a professional. And one of the beauties of going to a barbershop or a hair salon is the conversations that happen inside of those places. So to me, you absolutely do need brick and mortar. And I know a lot of people are doing these suites now where you kind of limit your visitation with other people. But I like the open concept because there's a lot of wisdom in those chairs. So Tell me what you think.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because I met with a gal literally last week in regards to this scenario. She's a beautician. And one of her big things is location. She wanted to leave her house because of the image that she was portraying with her customers. And almost, I mean, I don't want to make this sad, but almost like she was almost like discounting her services just because of where her location was. And it really, and she was very what she did, and her client base started feeling uncomfortable just coming into the house. And so we got to a point where we needed to find her a location. In the beauty salon business or in the barber business, it's visibility and location is probably 50% of what you do. People want to feel safe coming in there, and they it's almost like therapy, like you were saying, Angela. They go in there to spend an hour of their time just getting things off their chest and getting to vent and just relax. But So yeah, it's in that industry, it's extremely important. It's extremely important to be in an area that is visible, but people feel safe as well, because it's again, back to what Carl was saying, at the end of the day, it's a direct reflection of yourself. At the end of the day, it always comes down to one thing, and that's your product and your process, in my opinion. Because I know I've driven miles and miles and miles to go to a particular restaurant, so if you've got a good product, you've got to, I mean, I think we've all been there, so I mean, if you got a good product, you got a good process, people will come regardless where you're at.
Right.
The question that comes down to with your location is, at what cost? Are you cutting costs by having it at a particular location? For instance, a haircut that you would be charging, $15 for, somebody else down the street might be charging $35 for it, and you might be better than them just based upon that location. It's that perception when people walk into your facility or your location, how they feel. And that's a service-oriented business. I mean, you're selling yourself, so that is very, very important in that industry. So you're starting to see, like you're starting to see these trends open up, whether it's beauty salons, barber shops that are doing individual suites. Another big thing that's coming into play that a lot of people don't understand is you're starting to see these warehouse kitchens, and I'm going to touch upon that. And a lot of people don't understand what that means. Is in these major metropolitan cities, in these LA, Chicago, Atlanta, what they're starting to do is they're starting to build these 60,000 square foot kitchens. Within these kitchens is you have your Applebee's, you have your Chipotle's, you have Taco Bell, you have McDonald's, and all that. So what they do is those are external kitchens. So now when Grubhub goes to pick up hamburgers or your particular order, they're actually not going to the location. They're going to these actual satellite warehouses where they have these satellite kitchens built, and that's where they're picking up all their food. So it's cutting down their expense costs. So now they don't need that Broadway or that US 30 location that they're spending $30,000 a month on. They have offsite locations where they just have, a warehouse when they have these commercial kitchens in there, and it's saving them a lot of costs. It's able to, what it's allowing them to do, Angela and Carl, it's allowing them to bring down their costs on their food. So that way they can be more competitive. So that way people could utilize Grubhub a little bit more. And I mean, this is a prime example. We purchased from a particular restaurant that we always eat at, so let's say that particular meal was $10 when you go in there. Well, we ordered it through Grubhub and it was $18. So, I mean, that's a huge swing. So what it's allowing these commercial kitchens to do is it's allowing them to bring their costs down, because a lot more people are eating at home. They're still ordering food, but they're having it delivered to their house. So, that particular business, you're starting to see things change a little bit more. And I mean, we haven't necessarily seen it happen here. You're starting to see it in Chicago. And it's absolutely blowing up in Atlanta. It's blowing up in California. And it's going to blow up here. I mean, it's only a matter of time before it starts blowing up here, because those are the trends that are being set. In regards to the barber and hair salon and nail salons and barber shops, those are always going to be your little mom pop type shops, unless you're going to a major salon in downtown Chicago that charges extravagant dollars. But again, they're charging that because of their location. They're charging that because of the image that they're portraying to their consumers. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily better or they're using better products. It's just the atmosphere that they're giving to you and the experience that they're giving to you as a consumer. Yeah.
And that's funny because that made me think of something else. So what I thought of, I've heard this often. I've heard this a lot of times. I've talked to a few people that own restaurants, and they may have a really good product, okay? And and they say, well, I'm gonna open a restaurant in this particular city or town.
Right.
And in my mind, now this is just me, in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think it's going to work there because there's not really a need there for that particular line of food. And where you're going to put your location, you think just because you're putting yourself at that particular location is going to drive people to you. I only know of maybe 3 businesses that works for: McDonald's, Harley Davidson, and Starbucks.
Right.
Other people, like you said, you got to put the work in. So I'm wondering if you could talk to people about when they're choosing locations, because people think that if I just choose a location, it's going to work because I got good food.
Correct. The location, when it comes to eateries and restaurants, location is extremely important for your franchises. That is 90% of what they do is they do a lot of traffic studies. 10,000 people drive by here today. All we need is 3% of those people to stop in and visit us, and we're going to be, this is the amount of revenue that we're going to drive. So it's extremely important to them because they have a process and a product that has been perfected. When we look at, and to them, it's all about getting in front of people. No different than, the commercials that we see on a day-to-day basis. Same concept. Those franchises are dead set on, traffic fees. Now, when you have your mom and pop type shops, those aren't necessarily the case. I've some of the best restaurants that I've gone to are hole in the grounds. Areas that you would be like, I can't believe this restaurant's here, but it's packed.
Right.
People are outside. And that's what makes it unique. That's what makes, and I tell people, that's what makes it unique. That allows you to focus on your food. So if I'm representing a customer that is looking to open up a restaurant and they're dead set on traffic presence, it's extremely important for them to understand what their challenges are. I believe, in my opinion, and it's statistical opinions that I'm talking about here, is I think they're going to be overpaying for their location, that they would be more conducive backing off maybe a block or two in trying to find a bigger space than trying to get on a major intersection at a certain corridor with a lot less space and with a lot higher tax dollars and a lot higher rent. So that in a restaurant setting, that could really, really bury you. If you don't watch that and really be careful on that could really set you back quite a bit. And that could be the difference of you making it or not making it in the future. Because unlike what most people understand with commercial leases,
Uh-oh, Sasha, I think you froze up.
Yeah, he's frozen.
It's frozen. We can't hear you. Okay, so we can't hear Sash right now. So Carl, what I'll tell you is that it's funny, and so Sash connects again. I was thinking of a place where I used to work, and this particular company that I worked for always placed their locations next to or near a Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
Always next to or near a Dunkin' Donuts. And I think they did it for a couple of reasons. One, I don't believe that all police officers eat donuts. I don't think they hang out at donut shops all the time. I don't. And that's because I know a lot of law enforcers. But it does attract people to come there because they may be able to come and be centrally located in the center of that city or town where they're patrolling, and they can get to places faster. And it adds security then for your business.
Right.
Because it's a crime deterrent. And the donut shop is usually moving. There's usually a lot of people coming through there. So it gives you some free marketing or publicity. People get to see you when they're in the drive-thru because they're stuck there for a minute.
Right.
So I was actually going to ask Sash what he thought about that. I thought it was pretty smart because we got a lot of foot traffic, a lot. And they had probably maybe 40 locations, and all of them were structured that way. And all of them got a lot of foot traffic because of it. If there wasn't a Dunkin' Donuts nearby, they were next to a very popular fast food restaurant, like maybe a Subway, something like that. So it would always attract a certain kind of customer in there. So I thought that was cool. That was cool.
Yeah,
so.
that is absolutely cool, and it's very smart.
Yes.
When I was working at GCI, we're located 233 North Michigan. Cool. 233 North Michigan, and so inside the Thompson inside that facility is a lot of different shops and a lot of different things.
Right.
So yeah, and so you have a lot to do even on your way there. So
Okay.
yeah, and that's
You
one of
back,
the
Sash?
other things. That's one of the other
I
things that
apologize
I'm
about
looking for.
that, Angela and Carl.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Yep.
I apologize. I think my computer just kicked because I hadn't touched anything and we were just talking. But I forgot. I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? I got a little flustered here with the.
I don't know, but what I told Carl was when you were talking, I thought about a job that I used to work, a company I worked for. It was actually based in Chicago. They had about probably 40 or 50 locations. All of their locations were next to or nearby a Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
They were near Dunkin' Donuts, and as I told Carl, I don't believe that all law enforcers go and eat donuts all day. I think that sometimes they hang out at donut shops because they're centrally located within the city or the town where they're patrolling, and it's easier to respond to calls. So I thought it was interesting how this company I worked for, and if there wasn't a Dunkin' Donuts nearby, they were maybe near a Subway or something like that. Places that got a lot of foot traffic where people had to stand still for a minute or sit in their car for a minute at a drive-thru, and it forced them to look at you. So it gave them some free marketing, some free advertisement, and it also gave them security presence if there was a law enforcer next door. They felt like it was a crime deterrent. But it gave us a lot of foot traffic at all of their locations. They were very strategic in how they positioned their locations next to certain kind of places so that they can piggyback off of what they were doing too.
Sure. No, I mean,
yeah,
and you're 100% correct there. I mean, and there's a lot of you see that with a lot of the Walgreens stores and CVS stores. They like to open one up across the street from the other one, and so on and so forth. And that's just, I mean, they're so big. When you get to that point, location's number one to them. And their visibility, whether it's a Chase Bank or whether it's a McDonald's or whether it's a CVS, to them, location. They're buying. I mean, that's their form of advertising. They're spending a little bit more on that, but what they're doing is they're buying their advertising. They're future loading their advertising, and they're saving more money by doing that. And that's been a proven fact.
Yeah, because I see now most of the Walgreens, they came out of a strip mall, they went to their own building, and they're on corners, and there's a CVS maybe across from them, maybe a block away from them. It's very strategic.
Right.
And competition does drive price.
Sure.
And I'm just like, well, shoot, if I had to open a new location for something, guess where I might would go? Near Walgreens or CVS because it's getting the traffic. Yeah.
And the thing is, there's a price to pay for that. I mean, and people have to understand, and that's the double-edged sword that we were talking about earlier. There's a price for everything, and I mean, and if you want to get next to a CVS or a Walgreens or even a Dunkin' Donuts, I mean, you have to understand they paid a premium for that particular location. So the guy next door that owns that piece of property or owns that building is licking his chops because he knows that he's going to get paid a premium because those guys just moved in next door, So
that's right.
The biggest thing that I always tell even young entrepreneurs is always keep your costs down, because at the end of the day, it's money that belongs to you. So don't give it away. You work too hard to earn that money. Don't give that money away. Because there's always somebody out there willing to take that money from you. Just don't give it away. That's what I like to lead with. One of the things I'd like to leave you with today, Carl, is, next time you're driving around or looking around and you're looking for, or you're thinking about a particular space, ask yourself, what is it going to cost you on top of where you're at currently? How much more in revenue are you going to have to generate to pay for that place? And when you look at it that way, it's really eye-opening, because at the end of the day, even though it's a business and everybody wants to grow a business as fast as, and they want to have this large corporation and so on and so forth, it's extremely important to understand that money is your money. And I've been on, and I'm telling you from experience, Carl, because I've been in a scenario where we've had at one given point 27 employees. Well, I'm making more money now with a lot less, than I was back then, and a lot less headaches, So that's something to think about. I always tell people, always ask yourself, how are we going to pay for this? If you have to sit back and calculate it, and it's taking you a little bit long time, it's probably more, you're biting off more than you can chew,
I'm glad you brought that up, because as we're getting close to ending, I'll segue into what we're going to be talking about next week, because what you just said is exactly what we're going to be talking about next week. We're going to be talking about finances and forecasting and budgeting.
Sure.
Because you have to count up your costs. You do. Yes, that place may be beautiful. It may be on the third floor with this glass wall and all these beautiful things in the Chase building, but can you afford it? How much is it going to set you back? And so sometimes we need to have someone else to help us. Now, budgeting and financing and forecasting is usually the hardest part of business. And what I mean by hard is because when we see all of those numbers, it's overwhelming sometimes. And that's why you need a professional to help you. And you need somebody to help you. So next week, we're going to have Lolita Fagan-Thompson. I've known Lolita for a while, and Lolita also does my accounting and taxes. But Lolita's going to come in and talk about all of those things that you need to count up the cost for. Because there's a book out called The E-Myth. People believe that just because they are a good cook, they should open a restaurant. Not true. Don't believe that. Because you have to run that business, because if not, that business will run you. And that was something I learned from my own personal experience. I think my first few years of owning an agency, I was working like a dog. I mean, I was working from sunup to sundown, and I was exhausted. And I didn't understand why I was no longer having the same passion that I initially had. And it came to me one day that the business was running me. So I had to change my perspective and begin running the business so that I can enjoy the benefits of the business, and the people that I employed could also enjoy having me there, because if not, you're going to be stressed out and nobody wants to be around you. So, you have to really start to work on that business. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So make sure that everyone joins us next week at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time to talk about that. Come with your questions, because many people have questions about that. So, Carl, do you have any last minute questions for Sash before we say goodnight?
I think I just want to say thank you, Sash, for the wealth of information. You've definitely put some things on my mind, and you've helped me to kind of guide my thoughts in some areas. And so for that, I'm very grateful.
Anytime, Carl.
Okay. Well, Sash, I appreciate you. And I know you know it, but I still got to say it. I appreciate you taking your time. I think you have a lot of wisdom, and you have so much to offer to up and coming entrepreneurs. And I appreciate you taking time away from your family to join us on today. And Carl, I will look to see you next week. And Sash, I'll look to talk to you at some point, probably between now and next week.
Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Carl.
All right, you guys.
Thank you, Sash, and I will be there.
Okay, and go and do great things.
Thank you. You guys have a good evening.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.